Euthyphro is an early Platonic dialogue. It deals with the conversation between Socrates and Euthyphro. It takes place on the porch of the King Archon. Euthyphro is there as a plaintiff for the forthcoming trial for murder. Socrates asks Euthyphro, who's being charged with this crime, and he's shocked to learn that Euthyphro is bringing the charge against his own father. His father is being convicted of killing one of their servants. Socrates is also being charged with a crime. He's being charged by Meletus for being impious. He wants to know if anybody really knows what piety is, so he talks to Euthyphro, who's a sophist and professes to be wise concerning these matters. And Socrates makes no claim for himself. He only professes to be ignorant. But he wants to see if Euthyphro is actually as wise as he claims. And if he isn't, Socrates is going to expose him for the shallowness of his claim. Now, Euthyphro has a reputation of being a wise person, a diviner, and a soothsayer. But he really isn't that wise, and if he doesn't know the answer to something, he's not going to come out and say it. So Socrates tries to get the answer for what piety is from Euthyphro. While Socrates is impressed at the fact that Euthyphro is willing to convict his father, he's more anxious to pursue the inquiry concerning the nature of piety. Accordingly, he addresses the question to Euthyphro, what is piety? Euthyphro answers at once that piety is acting the way he is acting and bringing charges against one who has done wrong, even though that person happens to be his own father. Although admitting that Euthyphro is right in not allowing personal relationships to stand in the way of performing his duty, Socrates is not satisfied with this answer that has been given to his question. He says that this is an example of virtue rather than piety. Socrates insists that since Euthyphro has brought a criminal charge against his own father, he must have known the nature of impiety, or he would have been unable to decide that his father was guilty of it. Once again, he urges Euthyphro to tell him what piety is. If he can obtain a satisfactory answer to this question, it will enable him to know whether the charge that Meletus is bringing against him is a well-founded one. In reply, Euthyphro advances another statement. He says, piety is what is dear to the gods, and impiety is what is not dear to them. Socrates says that this statement turns out to be a more satisfactory one than the former one, but it is not clear what makes anything dear to the gods. And besides, there's the question of whether that which is dear to the gods is dear to all of them or only to some of them. Euthyphro then insists that piety is that which is pleasing to all of the gods. He feels sure they all agree that murder is wrong. Socrates then points out that the circumstances under which killing takes place makes an important difference concerning the moral quality of the act. The same is true with reference to the motive that was. It's evident that so far in the discussion it has not produced a satisfactory answer to the question concerning the nature of piety. So, in order to approach the subject in a different way, Socrates asks Euthyphro if people who are pious are also just. Euthyphro says yes, but at the same time, he recognizes that it is not true that all persons are pious. Socrates then wants to know if piety is a part of justice, and if it is, of what part does it consist? Euthyphro replies that piety is the part of justice that attends to the gods, just as there is another part of justice that attends to men. This too is unsatisfactory because we do not know what attends mean. When applied to some things such as dogs, horses, and men, it implies some way of making them better. When applied to gods, it cannot have this meaning since there is no respect in which men can make the gods better than they are. At this point, Euthyphro states that there are various ways in which men can minister to the gods, but he does not have the time to point them out. Socrates still insists that he does not know what piety is, and certainly Euthyphro has not revealed its true nature. The question is an important one, not only for Socrates, but for anyone who is called upon to make decisions relative to moral conduct. The dialogue closes without any final answer to the question with which the discussion started. Socrates urges Euthyphro to continue the search for the meaning of piety. Until he has found it, there can be no justification for the decision he has made concerning his father.